Oh my goodness, folks. Cathay is here. That's right. Grand Cathay. The trailer's here. I'm gonna let you all watch it, then we're gonna talk about it and talk about what we know so far.
From the stars came the will to shape fate, hurling this world toward ruin. This burden is mine to bear. To offer guidance where it is most needed. To demand sacrifice. Sentinel of the Great Bastion! Supreme Matriarch of Nangao. Master of the Storm Winds. Daughter of the Dragon Emperor.
So, floating cities, hot air balloons with guns, dragons, looks like all kinds of well-armed troops, fireworks, giant terracotta warriors. Yes, sign me up, please. One Cathay, please. Yeah, so I'm pretty hyped about this. I don't know about you all, but that trailer leaves me excited, even though we just found out that Warhammer 3 is going to be delayed. In the history of Total War, delays are not always a bad thing. We've had Total War games delayed before, and it ultimately usually led to good things. Now, yes, it does mean that many of us are disappointed that we're not going to get hands-on with this game sooner, but better that CA release it later and get it right and take their time, because you're going to need a really, really amazing title to top the last two, so I'm totally behind the fact that if they feel like they need to delay it, then by all means delay it. Delay it till it's ready. Launch it in excellent shape. That's what I want. So let's jump into Grand Cathay, because that is the trailer we just saw. What is Grand Cathay? Well, of course, they have a blog post up. I will link to this in the description. Grand Cathay is not just any nation or faction in Warhammer. It is the largest one in the Warhammer world. And so they are located far beyond the mountains to the east, past the lands of the dwarves. So if we're looking at the map, beyond the lands where Thorgrim and his dwarf kin live, further to the east, that is where we find Grand Cathay. So also kind of cool. I mean, we kind of know that that map is already going east, but it is definitely interesting to know. Now, I'm going to read some parts here straight out of their blog post, just so I do this justice, okay? It says, overseen by Celestial Dragon Emperor and his wife, the Moon Empress, and ruled by their children, it is a mysterious land of incredible military might. Massive terracotta statues come to life, which we saw in the video. and defend the Great Bastion, which I'm assuming that's the city that we're seeing there, against the floods of chaos that come to Grand Cathay's doors. Hey, and by the way, I'm hyped for Cathay, but anybody else hyped for Tzeentch there too? I mean, we got some really Tzeentchy looking action. I'm no like Warhammer lore expert, but that's definitely looking like some fun Tzeentchy action there. Anyway, they've got dragon-blooded sorcerers. They wield magic lore, so we're going to find out about 2 new lores here called Yin and Yang, which is really cool because I love where Warhammer kind of brings some real mythology and stuff and then mixes it into a fantasy world. I think it makes this game particularly fun. I'm looking forward to it. So Grand Cathay had been previously mentioned in, I believe, they told us that it was the Warhammer 2nd edition, but of course it was not something that Games Workshop had fleshed out any further at the time, so clearly CA is cooperating with Games Workshop to create these characters and create the lore, and I'm also excited because I'm hoping that that means miniatures for some tabletop play from Grand Cathay at some point too. And holy crap, could there be some good miniatures? Just look what's going on in the background here. We got freaking lightning dragons going on. That's what's going on back here. So, yeah. Now, apparently, just a little more info on the dragons. Apparently, the rulers of Cathay are immortal dragons who can take human form. So that's pretty cool. We're talking about some kind of creature here that, like, I guess maybe like what we've seen with Zarkon and Malice, except to a larger extent, they can literally transform. So apparently we're going to find out more about all that soon. But let's talk a little bit more about the Celestial Dragon Emperor and his wife. I'm going to read a little bit more from their blog post. Again, this will be linked so you all can go read it for yourself. Apparently the Dragon Emperor and his wife are like the power couple, according to CA, and I'm assuming this is Games Workshop, obviously, that they're getting this from. And they reside in the Celestial City above Weijin, contemplating the destiny of the Empire. And basically you have the Celestial Emperor and the Moon Empress who are equally revealed. And apparently these are older than most gods. They existed, it says, when the planet was colder, before even the old ones came to put it closer to the sun. So I know lizardmen people may not like the fact that these people are older than the old ones, but that's what we're being told lore-wise. It says they rarely leave the Celestial Court, and their power level is frankly on par with most gods. And so that's why we're not going to see these characters as legendary lords, right? Because that would be like bringing literally Tzeentch or Khorne or, you know, these other gods onto the battlefield. And so it's just not something that we're going to see. Instead, they're going to use their children for legendary lords, which is really cool. And we should also get some nice variety out of that. Yeah, so apparently we're not going to be playing as basically these god characters, which is going to be the Celestial Emperor and his wife, the Moon Empress. So instead, the legendary lords that we're going to be introduced to coming up are Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, ruler of the Western provinces and Lord of Shenyang, and Miao. I'm probably saying these all wrong, so I'm going to apologize in advance. Miao Ying, which is the Storm Dragon, ruler of the northern provinces. And she is the one that we saw in this video. I believe I remember her saying ruler of the northern provinces. So we saw Miao Ying here and the Storm Dragon with all the lightning and stuff in the trailer. So that's pretty exciting. So those are the legendary lords that we should expect to learn more about. Now, another piece that we need to talk through is how they're going to play. We got to see a fair number of units in the trailer. We saw a lot of heavily armed halberd and spear-armed troops. As far as the troops for men, we saw terracotta warriors that looked like they were armed with some form of large spear, or, you know, again, maybe a halberd. We saw flying balloons and other flying cavalry. We saw a lot of guns, a lot of artillery, and Cathay is going to play very defensively. And this probably is kind of cooked into their lore. And a few things that they tell us in the blog is that their ranged and melee units receive buffs when in close proximity. Their power is boosted as the yin and the yang that runs through every inhabitant of the Empire works in concert. So it sounds like they have to kind of work close to each other when in combat, which quite frankly could make them vulnerable to some vortex spells and stuff if you get a little too close. So we'll have to see what else that does. But anyway, it gives them very strong ranged firepower, and I love that. I just love firearms in the Total War games, no matter which one it is. It says they're slow moving, and this makes them easy to flank, but they have flying machines, alchemists, and dragon sorcerers to make their army formidable. So maybe kind of like the dwarves, right? The dwarves are a little bit defensive with a lot of firepower, but I think one of the big differences is going to be is that Cathay probably does have quite a few tools for stopping charges and other stuff like that. And the dwarves do now. They have more tools than they used to, but you all know what I mean. It says also on the Grand Campaign map that they have to use the incredible wealth of what they're calling the Ivory Road, which I'm assuming is obviously a throw to the Silk Road. And it's going to be some kind of special mechanic. They don't, get into details with this, but it's going to be some kind of special mechanic on how their economy is going to work. And that also sounds really exciting. And again, cool that it's tied to something from reality as well. Some extra information regarding the unit types that we could expect to see from Cathay. It says most of their infantry is going to wield spears and halberds. Again, we saw this in the video, so not a terrible surprise. They also heavily favor spellcasters. And then again, they have alchemists and astromancers having equal levels of power on the battlefield. I don't know a ton about these units, but we can expect that there's probably interesting support units. Are they magic units? I don't know. Or is it just extra kind of support type units? Again, I'm not sure. Maybe just heroes that maybe buff certain types of units as well. I'm not 100% certain of this. But they apparently also have elite crossbowmen because they mention those right after they talk about flying units and terracotta sentinels. So we're going to have flyers. We're going to have large constructs, maybe akin to like what we saw with the Tomb Kings. And then there's going to be crossbowmen and artillery pieces. And they even mention war machines as well. So I don't know exactly what that means yet. But that could be something really interesting to see as well. It also goes on to mention that Cathay is one of the most populous nations of the old world, and so it does sound like that they also have a lot of troops. And it says some of them are less trained and they're more fragile, but I think that they're supposed to be a part of the Grand Cathay scheme where they have these large numbers of troops to help wear down enemies while their firepower and stuff works. So it sounds very interesting, honestly, to me. So they do mention one last thing at the end of the blog post that we'll get into, and I like the way they state it. So I'm going to read this. It says, well, that's all very exciting, but it's September, and I want to know more about the future of sieges and minor settlement battles. Don't we all, right? That's a fair question. And they say, understandable. As we go into details on the unique defense of the Great Bastion and Grand Cathay can take part in, we'll also explain how sieges play in Warhammer 3. Beyond that, well, you can probably guess from the trailer who gets the highlight once Grand Cathay have had their moment in the sun. Folks, that would be Tzeentch, the great bringer of change here. So yeah, in any case, I'm excited to see more news for Warhammer 3. Get down in the comments. Tell me all what you think. Did you like the trailer? Was the trailer good? Are you excited for Grand Cathay? Are you more excited for Tzeentch? Or can Tzeentch and Cathay stick it because you already have other factions and plans in mind? Tell me what you all think. I'm super hyped for this. It looks fantastic. I hope you all are hyped for it too. And we'll talk soon when we get more news from Creative Assembly on what's coming next.